Somali pirates terrorized international waters, turning the Indian Ocean into a no-go zone. In 2011 alone, they held over 700 hostages and collected $160 million in ransom money. Locals call them protectors of their waters, while the world brands them ruthless criminals. But how did desperate fishermen transform into the world's most feared sea pirates? The year was 2009. An American cargo ship, the Maersk Alabama, was sailing across the Indian Ocean. It was going from Oman to Kenya, carrying humanitarian aid, roughly 440 kilometers off the Somali coast. Strange signals appeared on its radar. A small boat was speeding towards them. The crew had only one thought: not again. You see, in the past 24 hours, this ship had already escaped 2 similar encounters and managed to escape. But this time, as the boat drew near, they got a message on the ship's radio. Cargo ships usually try to outrun attackers by speeding up, but that only worked if the pirates were still far off. The Alabama could only manage 18 to 20 knots, while the pirates' fast boat could easily reach 25. As the pirates' boat got closer, Captain Richard Phillips triggered the emergency alarm. Crew members rushed to the safe room. There weren't many options to defend themselves. They had little more than water hoses to spray intruders, hardly enough to stop armed men. Moments later, the sound of a ladder latching onto the ship. The first pirate climbed aboard, gun in hand, firing as he advanced toward Captain Phillips. 14 out of 19 crew members locked themselves inside the safe room. 2 others found hiding spots, while Captain Phillips and 2 men stayed at the bridge, the ship's command hub, located high at the front. To make escape harder, the helmsman swerved the ship violently side to side. The wild steering capsized the pirates' boat, but 4 attackers had already boarded. Their leader, just 18 years old, was Abduwali Muse, surrounding Captain Phillips and his men at gunpoint. They insisted they weren't there to kill, only to take money. They ordered Phillips to stop the ship, and he cut the engine, demanding to know where the rest of the crew was. The pirate pushed him to summon them. One of the crew members, Zaid Reza, replied that the others wouldn't come out unless they knew it was safe. But Abduwali Muse, the young leader, insisted on seeing them. Reza offered to take Muse to them, but only if he left his gun behind. Surprisingly, Muse agreed. As they walked past the engine room, Chief Engineer Mike Perry burst out from hiding. He stabbed Abduwali Muse in the hand and dragged him into the safe room, locking him inside with other crew. The pirate leader was now their prisoner. The 3 remaining pirates panicked when they realized their leader was captured. Unsure of their next move, they still had Phillips at gunpoint. After tense negotiations, they agreed to abandon the ship if given all the money on board. They proposed a deal. In exchange for Phillips, their leader Muse had to be returned. To pull it off, they needed a lifeboat, since their own vessel was destroyed. The lifeboat required an electric winch, which meant restarting the engines, and the whole crew's help. The crew brought Muse out as part of the exchange. According to the deal, he had been handed back, and Phillips freed. But once Muse was returned, Phillips found himself stuck on the lifeboat, forced to show the pirates how to operate it. Seizing the chance, the 4 pirates kidnapped Phillips. They dropped the lifeboat into the sea and fled with him. The drama had all the ingredients for global attention. Soon, news channels everywhere were covering the Somali pirates. This true incident later inspired the 2013 film titled Captain Phillips. Somalia's pirates struck countless ships. The world sees them as criminals, men with guns and speedboats, hijacking ships and demanding millions in ransom. But to many Somalians, they were defenders, protectors. They were celebrated like a modern-day Robin Hood. But the truth is never that simple. Somalia pirates are not just one story of men chasing money. They are the product of a country destroyed, of seas poisoned by foreign greed, and of young boys who had nothing else to live for. Piracy became the only way to feed their families. Piracy had been happening off Somalia's coast for years, but it rarely made headlines. This story you just heard changed everything. Before we find out what later happened to Captain Phillips, we need to understand why so many young Somalians turned to the sea. To get the full picture, we first need to understand Somalia's pain. And through Somalia's story, you will see how Africa as a whole has been exploited again and again. On the map, Somalia sits at Africa's far northeast. The Indian Ocean borders it on the east, the Gulf of Aden to the north, separating it from the Middle East. This makes Somalia's location extremely important, a gateway between South Asia and Africa, right next to the Arab world. This is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. Roughly 20% of global trade passes through these waters. Historically, northern Somalia was under British rule, while the south was controlled by Italy. In 1960, both regions gained independence and united into one country. July 1st is celebrated as Somalia's Independence Day, but just 9 years later, the chaos began. On October 15, 1969, President Abdirashid Ali was assassinated by his own bodyguard. Soon after, the army chief staged a coup and seized power, and the country fell into military dictatorship. Unlike other countries where people are divided by race or religion, Somali leaders used clan differences to divide their own people. They turned clans against each other, which led to discrimination, tension, and eventually civil war. The conflict was at its peak on January 27, 1991, when opposing clans joined forces to overthrow President Siad Barre. Afterward, Somalia's central government collapsed entirely, with no central authority. Clans battled each other for dominance. Northern Somalia declared itself independent, calling the new region Somaliland. In 1991 alone, famine, war, and disease claimed about 350,000 Somali lives. It was in this chaos that piracy began to take shape. The waters of Somalia are among the richest in the world, filled with coral reefs, tuna, sardines, shrimp, and rays. The country's coastline had one of the highest fish concentrations anywhere. As the government collapsed, foreign fishing fleets flocked in, taking advantage of Somalia's instability. They illegally netted tons of tuna and other fish. By 2006, a UN report confirmed that with no coast guard left to patrol its seas, Somali waters had become open territory for anyone to exploit. Normally, the coastal guard would protect the nation's waters, but without it, the sea became lawless. Fishing ships from around the world exploited Somali waters, threatening how local fishermen made their living. The UN estimated that $300 million worth of seafood was stolen annually from Somali waters. To maximize their catch, foreign vessels dragged heavy steel nets across the seafloor, ripping up coral reefs and destroying habitats. Beyond the immediate catch, this wrecked the future of Somalia's coastal communities. The poor Somali fishers lacked the advanced technology to match these foreign ships. When they protested, foreign fishermen met them with gunfire in high-pressure water cannons. And that was only half the story. Foreign firms also started dumping toxic industrial waste along Somalia's shores. Since the 1980s, Some European companies offloaded dangerous materials, uranium, lead, cadmium, mercury, especially in the north. After the government fell in 1991, the dumping increased. What had been dumped on land increasingly ended up in the sea. Swiss and Italian companies were frequently named, and waste from German, French, and Italian plants and hospitals also found its way to Somali waters. Two names often cited: Swiss firm Acer and Partners and Italian Progresso. See, on paper, these were waste management companies registered in their countries, but they trafficked waste because it was wildly cheaper than legal disposal. According to the United Nations, when a European company dumped its waste in the Somali Sea, it cost as little as $2.50 per ton, while proper dumped in Europe cost around $250 per ton. Locals weren't aware of this. Companies cut deals with warlords. Clans were armed in exchange for permission to dump waste through the Guns for Waste pipeline. This deadly trade-off brought countless weapons into Somalia. Foreign companies made double profit on every trip. Ships would dock carrying hazardous waste, dump it in Somali seas, then reload with illegally caught fish before heading home. Then came the December 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, which ruptured waste containers offshore and washed toxins onto Somali beaches. The tsunami killed around 150 people in Somalia and tainted scarce water sources. Villages reported sudden illness, severe respiratory problems, bleeding gums, brain hemorrhages, and strange skin rashes. Deaths followed. One doctor said he had never seen so many cancer cases in a single year. Imagine this from an ordinary Somali's perspective: war, poverty, hunger, plus vanishing fish from illegal fleets, and now toxin-sickening families. Of course, Somali communities, especially fishermen, refused to accept such brazen exploitation. Fishermen began self-patrolling to defend their waters and resources. When they spotted a foreign illegal fishing ship, they confronted and attacked them. These groups called themselves Coast Guards. At first, their actions were framed as protection of their rights. Once they saw the money involved, the mission shifted. Fishermen joined hands with armed clans and formed outfits like the Somalia Coastal Guards and National Volunteer Coastal Guard. They began seizing foreign fishing boats, towing them to Somali ports, and demanding ransom for the crew's release. When ransoms started flowing, desperate Somalia youth saw piracy as a living. What began as survival turned into a career. At first, they used ordinary fishing boats, but soon, profit allowed them to buy speedboats, GPS trackers, and heavier arms. Pirates soon realized, why stop at fishing ships? Huge commercial cargo ships sailed unprotected with no armed guards. Hijacking them meant far bigger ransoms and far less resistant. That's when piracy's full profit potential revealed itself. With food scarce and lack of job opportunities, pirates became one of the only ways for young men to feed their families. In 1998, a region in northeastern Somalia called Puntland declared itself independent, acting like an independent state. With no central government to stop them, this gave pirates even greater freedom and turned Puntland into their safe haven. Between 2005 and 2012, Puntland, particularly the coastal town of Ale, was nicknamed the pirates' capital. Piracy evolved into an organized industry. Armed gangs ran the operations, recruiting teenagers. 16-year-olds risked their lives hijacking ships, only to see gangs pocket most of the ransom. With the profit, warlords stocked up on AK-47s and even rocket launchers. But how did these hijackings actually play out? You see, pirates would speed towards their target, pointing guns and firing warning shots to force the crew to stop. They carried rope ladders tipped with hooks, which they'd toss onto the ship's side. Once the hooks gripped firmly, pirates climbed aboard to face crews who were usually unarmed and outnumbered. Most offers no resistance. Entire hijackings were often completed in less than half an hour. The hardest part was getting close enough to launch the ladder and scale the ship. Many attempts failed. The success rate was just 20 to 30%. But when successful, pirates diverted the vessel to a sympathetic Somali port. There, guards and translators managed the hostages while ransom negotiations began. Payments flowed through banks in London or Dubai, then were dropped in cash bundles directly onto ship decks. Once pirates collected the money, ships and crews were released. The bounty was divided. Half went to the hijackers, a third to the investors who funded the operation, and the rest to guards and translators. Some cash even went to money checkers, who verified the notes weren't counterfeit. In some cases, a portion was handed out as charity to the poor or disabled, which built their Robin Hood reputation. Many hostages later admitted they were generally treated decently during captivity. Hostages were often told they were ordinary people caught in a bigger game. Pirates defended their actions by calling ransom a form of taxation, since Somalia had no functioning government to collect taxes. In Somali, they called themselves Badadinta Bada, saviors of the sea. Over time, piracy became highly organized, with recruiters, financiers, mission leaders, negotiators, and even bankers. Outside investors poured money into pirate outfits. With boats, fuel, weapons, and food to buy, piracy had grown into a structured business model. Many young pirates couldn't afford the basics, boats, fuel, or weapons, so they turned to outside backers. A 2011 UN Nippon Foundation report noted financiers loaned around $30,000 to groups striking the open seas and about $10,000 to those working in the Gulf of Aden. By 2008, piracy had exploded into Somalia's most lucrative industry. That year alone, it generated about $50 million. A BBC report estimated that between 2005 and 2012, Somali pirates pulled in $339 to $413 million in ransom. Each hijacker could pocket $30,000 to $75,000 per job. There was even a $10,000 bonus for the first man to climb aboard. By 2011, piracy hit its peak, costing the global economy an estimated $7 billion. Among the most infamous cases was the Saudi supertanker Sirius Star, hijacked in November 2008, released only after a $3 million ransom. The Sirius Star, roughly the size of 3 aircraft carriers, became the largest ship ever seized. Another notorious case came in March 2013, when the Greek tanker Smyrni was hijacked and held for 10 months, finally freed after a $9.5 million ransom. To be honest, the shipping firms really paid these ransoms. Most payments came directly from the private companies that owned the vessels. Eventually, insurers introduced kidnap and ransom policies. So in many cases, it was actually insurance payout funding the pirate. And in rare cases, government themselves paid ransoms. Now, back to the most famous case of all, the story of Captain Phillips. He ended up kidnapped aboard a lifeboat. The lifeboat was lowered and the pirates sailed off with Phillips, while his crew watched helplessly. They tried following, but their vessel was far slower. Distress signals were immediately sent to the nearest U.S. warship, the USS Bainbridge, stationed about 500 kilometers away, took 12 hours to arrive. When it reached, Phillips was still captive in the lifeboat. The Bainbridge shadowed them, soon joined by 2 other Navy ships. the USS Alberton and USS Boxer. Meanwhile, the Maersk Alabama was ordered to continue safely toward Kenya. This way, the rest of the crew stayed safe while US ships engaged in tense negotiations. The pirates demanded $2 million, threatening to execute Phillips if refused. He sat tied up in the small lifeboat, while guns pointed at him. At 2 a.m. the next night, Phillips tried to escape, jumping into the water. But gunfire erupted as the pirates woke and he was dragged right back aboard. This continued for 3 days. The Navy refused to pay, instead trying different tactics to stop the pirates. They tried draining the lifeboat's fuel, even deploying helicopters to block its course. Navy snipers took positions, waiting. Another day passed. Abduwali Muse, the young pirate leader, was growing weaker. His stab wound had become badly infected. In desperation, Abduwali Muse asked the Navy for medical help. Navy SEALs approached, treated his hand, and urged him to release Phillips. Muse agreed, but when he returned, the other pirates refused. Suddenly, high winds pushed the lifeboat closer to the main bridge. The pirates again threatened to kill Phillips. In that tense moment, Navy snipers took their shot, killing 3 pirates instantly. Muse was the only one spared. Phillips was rescued at last. The 18-year-old Muse became the first pirate tried in the US since 1885. In 2011, Muse was handed a 33-year sentence in the US, where he remains in prison today. If nothing changes, he won't walk free until 2038. Recent photos show him in prison, where he even managed to complete a degree. To stop Somali piracy, the US and allies launched Task Force 151 in 2009, a multinational naval effort. The EU and NATO also rolled out their own anti-piracy missions. Soon, China, Russia, and India sent warships too. By 2011, there were 237 attacks, down to 75 in 2012, and just 15 by 2013. But what really broke the piracy momentum was a small change. Cargo ships began carrying armed security guards. Suddenly, hijacking became far more dangerous. From their high decks, guards had the perfect angle to shoot at pirate speedboats, even disabling engines before they got close. It proved so effective that no guarded vessel was ever hijacked. Ships also upgraded, faster engines, coils of barbed wire along the rails, fortified safe rooms, foam sprayers, high-pressure water cannons, even sonic blasters, all made pirate boarding nearly impossible. By 2017 to 2023, piracy nearly vanished. For years, not a single cargo ship was successfully taken. But things shifted in 2023 when the Hamas-Israel war broke out. US ships turned their attention to Yemen's Houthi rebels, leaving gaps in Somali waters. Pirates pounced. On December 14, 2023, the cargo ship MV Rowan was hijacked, the first in years. In March 2024, the Indian Navy intervened. After a 40-hour standoff, 35 pirates surrendered. On March 23rd, they were brought to Mumbai and handed over to police for trial. Yet, piracy didn't stop there. On March 12, 2024, a Bangladeshi vessel was taken and freed a month later, after paying a $5 million ransom. Then, in November 2024, pirates captured a Chinese fishing vessel with help from the ship's own security guards, who switched sides. The gang demanded $10 million, eventually settling for $2 million before the ship was freed. Clearly, the story isn't black and white. Somalia's history shapes local views. One survey found 70% of Somalis see piracy as national defense, not crime. One pirate told the Pulitzer Center that the real pirates were foreigners invading Somali seas and dumping toxic waste. not the locals who fought back. Other nations found ways to push back piracy, but the toxic and even nuclear waste dump in Somalia seas, no one has cleared it. Somalia has never been compensated either. International groups point to the deeper roots of piracy, poverty, and joblessness. Regions with the worst illegal and unregulated fishing often produce the most pirates. A parallel can be seen in Niger Delta, where the Gulf of Guinea has become piracy's new hotspot, with gangs targeting oil tankers. The Niger Delta, nicknamed the Oil Rivers, pumps out billions in profit for multinational companies, but locals see little benefit. Instead, they suffer poisoned land, polluted waters, and rising cancer rates. The wealth is extracted, but the burden is theirs. Some locals began sabotaging pipelines, kidnapping oil workers, and raiding tankers at sea. In the Congo, the world rushes for cobalt and coltan to power our phones and electric cars, while Congolese miners die in pits for just a few dollars. In Angola and Sierra Leone, diamonds made foreign companies rich while locals were left in poverty. When people are robbed of their dignity, their land, and their survival, they will fight back, sometimes in ways the world calls criminals. We must face the truth. One form of injustice cannot justify another. It's also important to remember many pirates weren't desperate fishermen, but ardent gangsters. Clans, they play a major role. Warlords saw piracy as a business opportunity, recruiting young boys and taking most of the profit. So here is what this old story taught me. Fighting back against injustice, that's human nature. But when your fight becomes another form of injustice, well, then what's the point? It basically loses its meaning.